Grass ball. Grass ball. Grass ball. Grass ball.
I tricked you with fake grass. Wahaha!
Welcome to my channel. It's Goddess Gaia's channel, where I channel from the divine feminine. I infuse the divine feminine into teachings that I like to share with you. If you like Eastern philosophy, if you appreciate ecofeminism, love metaphysics, or radical love, or even ASMR, I do all of that, so be sure to check out my content. I was like pouring my heart out last night into this document that I'm gonna share from, and yeah, are you ready? The subject of this video is primarily based on when I've talked to my friends and family about radical justice, social liberation work, what I've noticed when speaking to them. Over several years of research and realization, I saw that dismissive avoidants kind of avoid or deny what progress that we're trying to make, and identify them as dismissive avoidant based on how they attach to me, basically. I identify my attachment style as secure attachment because I do a lot of work on myself. But I will say that during times of difficulty, or if I'm in physical weakness or trauma is being triggered, I do tend to lean towards anxious attachment style. So we all usually have like our main attachment and then our secondary attachment. It tends to seem to me that anxious attachers want to help others and they want to selflessly put themselves out there. They are more open to stories of vulnerability and hearing other people's pain. Being selfless can be an issue on itself, but I'm focusing on the dismissive avoidant side for this video. If you want to see the anxious attachment side, please let me know in the comments and I'll definitely make a video about that. So ever since the big protests from June 2020 in regards to Black Lives Matter, we've seen this one book recommended so many times. I'll put it right there. And this book is like all about how we deny and deflect the work that we have to do on ourselves. So that's just a reference point if you want to check that book out. But I want to answer the question, like, why am I equating attachment styles with social justice work? How are they relevant in any way? Attachment is how we fit ourselves within the world, and it's how we create our expectations and our perceptions of the world. You may know, if you study psychology, that we usually project onto the world and we see what we want to see or what we're programmed to see. In a spiritual sense, this is how we attach to the world and expect it to bring us fulfillment or love. Although this may sound like it contradicts with Buddhist philosophy, which says attachment is what creates suffering, it's actually not, because we have to involve ourselves in this reality and forget who we really are. And part of that is attachment, so it's all part of the journey. If you're interested about learning more about attachment styles and spirituality, I made a video and I'll put it right there. You can check that out. So avoidance is actually a trauma response, and it's the way that we learn to protect ourselves from what was painful in our childhood, but that also became programmed into us. Because social justice work requires empathy and research, it can be at times re-triggering or open new types of trauma, which we didn't know previously, and then that trauma response switches on. Okay, this is important. So manipulators and abusers tend to have a dismissive avoidant attachment style, or a fearful avoidant attachment style. Fearful avoidance, sometimes also called disorganized, is flipping back and forth between anxious and dismissive. The reason this is so vital to address is because abusive or manipulative people are atop power positions within social structures such as families, organizations, or even a nation. And manipulation is a tactic that's used by the ego when it's really power hungry and it needs to fill itself up. It doesn't feel fulfilled by anything. It's a sign of a lot of trauma, by the way. I do want to clarify that I'm not saying all dismissive avoidant people are abusers. Please keep that in mind. I'm saying abusive people or manipulative people tend to be dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant, but on the avoidant side because of the denial towards looking at their own shadow or their own troubles and trauma. You can see this by the way they withhold affection or communication as a form of punishment sometimes in intimate relationships. The reason this is so detrimental to social liberation work is because the power component is what we really have to look at, because when these people sit atop social structures, the people below them really have to go along with whatever they say, whether it rings true for them or not, whether it's authentic to themselves. This is basically fear-based leadership because people under them are coerced into going along with what they say, even if it hurts themselves, other individuals, or other groups of people. Oh, this is some heavy stuff. I know this is actually like a lot more psychology. I don't often do that, but I do study psychology a lot on my own, so I didn't want to make a video on this. What exactly does their response framework look like? It looks like denying, avoiding, deflecting, anything that has to do with looking away from your own pain and suppressing it.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Can I just say how unfortunate that this is often programmed into men because they have to suppress their sensitivity or their real emotions when they're going through pain, and they adapt this type of attachment style. It can also be looked at normativity at large is based around denial, also called patriarchy. This is literally where we face our biggest roadblocks, because in order to change things and to improve for the future, we have to really take a look at the hard stuff and the history of why something is the way that it is right now. This doesn't only mean that dismissive avoidants are at fault. I really want to clarify that. This video is only meant for awareness, because if we attach to the world in an avoidant style, we really cannot make progress because we're always looking away from what needs to change. Dismissive avoidants tend to go towards hyper-independence or being self-serving towards themselves, not looking at the interdependent frameworks of how we help one another in society.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
My inner child really went off today. I just wanted to make art on my face and it feels so good. This is so random, but do phrases ever get stuck in your head? Like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I've had please excuse my dear Aunt Sally stuck in my head. So this is gonna sound stupid, but please excuse my dear inner child. Yo, that's not even funny. Because, alright, let's get back to the hard stuff. Because progress towards social and environmental change is painful, you can often find dismissive avoidance denying or altering their reality in order to avoid that pain. What I mean by altering reality is that they twist things to make it seem that everything is okay and that their needs are being met, they're alright, and nothing needs to be changed. Of course, this involves the fear of change as well, but this is really destructive to both themselves and others as well, because it means they're even suppressing their own needs or pain points within the larger social structure.
Polar bears are dying. The ice caps are melting. Humans are depleting all the natural.
So here's the 5 types of fear of change that I found on an article on Inc.com. And I'll put that article in the description below. Number 1, people fear being different when there's no precedent already. This is why Norway and Sweden are always brought up when socialist policies are being put forward. In the US, progressive leftists have been asking for defunding and demilitarization of the police. And although we're on different spots in the spectrum of this ask, of course it is a radical ask, and it's seen as very scary because there's no precedent for it before. Yet if our world was built on loving structures with safety nets, this would be possible. Number 2, people feel fatigued or stressed. Where does a large portion of our psychological fatigue come from? It comes from not being our authentic selves and having to suppress it into our subconscious. Authenticity comes from being able to express our own needs, fears, and desires. It's about vulnerability as well as being who you really are. But the dismissive protection framework is built around really suppressing, boom, their real selves down into their subconscious, and this is going on all the time. So that creates that psychological fatigue. And often this is not even felt by them. They don't know that they're doing it. Number 3, people fear departure from the status quo. Usually the phrase used for this is the way things have always been done is the right way. Variations of that. This is kind of self-explanatory because it's like, well, if we don't question things, how will we make progress, you know? How can we improve social conditions if we can't even acknowledge that they're there? This is basically Fantasyland. Number 4. People don't trust the one in charge making changes. This is where bipartisanship, divides, and labels really hurt us. And yes, I know I called myself a progressive leftist earlier. I'm calling myself out on my own hypocrisy. Ideally, we would never need labels, but that's just the label that people use to identify us. The thing about this is that when we attach to leaders because of their identity or their subjective alliances, there's no way that we're gonna be objective about really seeing their words and their consequences. And number 5, people know change brings new set of possibilities and problems. This is actually the wiser of the bunch in these. But here's the thing. As humans, our minds are built around solving problems. Like, we love having problems to solve. So why not focus on higher problems rather than lower problems, such as, oh, what color shirt should I buy today? Instead of, where can I get the money to buy a shirt in the first place? Like, that's a lower need. And you can refer to like the Maslow's hierarchy to see the higher and lower needs. I want you to notice the fear element in all of these. Real change, real beautiful change comes from love. And if you're not familiar with the dichotomy of fear and love, it's kind of a spiritual concept, and I've made a video about it right here. Check that out. The one true thing that combats fear is love and only love. And progressive change should always come from this, from the empathy for a better life for all beings. Real love is equal. That means we put everyone's problems on the same footing as ours. When we see ourselves in others, we know that we all have to work on the same problem. Like, there are problems. Sadhguru kind of calls this identifying with the planet as opposed to our individual identity, our nation, our social group. These are all like ego-based identities. And we often consider big, haughty, self-aggrandizing egos as the problem, as a trauma response, but often small and subservient and self-neglecting egos are also trauma responses, which are associated with the anxious attachment style. Empathy and compassion work is more important for avoidance, and self-love and self-importance is what's necessary for anxious people. I actually mentioned Buddhism earlier, and Buddhism has a lot of compassion work that they do in it, because even though this philosophy is about connecting to your inner self, and they believe that behind everything is actually nothing, like on the fundamental level, there is nothing there. In order to pierce to that, and in order to see everything as equal and as one, we have to be compassionate towards it. We have to open our hearts. So if you are an avoidant person on any side of the spectrum, I do have some of these tendencies. I'm not perfect. Buddhist compassion work and compassion meditations would be wonderful for you. So check those out. And if you want, I could also make those videos, but I'm sure there's plenty of great resources out there already. Alright, so how can we move forward when facing dismissive avoidant people in doing our liberation work? Number 1, work on your own dismissiveness. This is really necessary if you want to work on bettering the planet. If you have these tendencies, try and catch yourself participating in hierarchies of oppression. Usually, you'll try to tell yourself it's completely okay, and this is often on a subconscious level, but it's usually hierarchies and shame that keeps things out of being questioned. It is really in your empowerment to question things all the time, no matter what. And I assure you, Google has plenty of resources if you want to type in a quick question and learn about the world and expand your mind. Number 2, don't get defensive and don't argue with them. Our morality does not have to be proven right in order to continue doing our work. It is people with large egos that have to prove themselves right and their morality correct. The only morality we need is love, because it is self-justifying. It is intuitive and connected with our authentic selves. When we know love, we understand that everyone else desires and seeks love as well. We are just like everyone else seeking that love. And what we really can focus on is service of that love to others. So it's action that matters, not excessive arguing. Because usually when we enter an argument, people have already shut their ears, especially if there's dismissive avoidant. They sink into their subconscious trauma response and deflect, and all those things come out. I.e. Twitter battles or live shouting battles where no one is listening is not gonna move our society towards progression. And number 3, don't let their insults get to you. This can often be passive-aggressive, direct, or guilt. Like I said, it is not our job to seem morally superior, and we really need to just focus on actions and service. The silent treatment, guilt tripping, and denial really have no function in our work. It is used to deter us, but don't let it get to you. Don't take it personal. It's not about you. You are your authentic self, your loving core. And I know you would love that video. I have another one if you'd like to check out how to get rid of your anxiety. And this definitely helps with liberation work as well. Thank you so much for sticking around with me until the end. You can check me out on Instagram at Goddess Gaia. I share plenty of cool stuff there and my personal journey. Please remember to like this video, subscribe, leave a comment about whatever you thought. Does this resonate with you? Do you know people like this? Do you also see your dismissive avoidant tendencies or even fearful avoidant on the dismissive side? All this stuff is important to acknowledge about ourselves. So yeah, let me know in the comments and I respond to everyone, so I'll get to you for sure. Thank you so much once again, and bye-bye. See you next time.